turn happens on the frosty peaks of Nepal, high up in the Himalayas. Global indeed. That is where these two teams will square off. Patapan and SQX both going to come out on heavy DPS picks.
This is where for Global as well, really flexing that 3-3 gauge that has really put them far forward in this current meta. This is kind of their bread and butter. And for Xavier as well, looking at what their strengths are, we know Patapan is a very strong DPS player. Straight away, Global Esports recognize the fire, they recognize the Sombra, and they want to make changes straight off the bat.
Just going to go ahead, swap over to the Winston instead, gives them a bit more mobility, bit of verticality. Also going to move into a Moira. This has given Patapan a lot of free fire time to charge up some ultimate.
A lot of this is due to the fact that the Zenyatta is going to be quite weak against the DPSs. The Ryan as well going to just be cannon fodder for Patapan in the skies. Global Esports do relinquish the point early on, and now they need to take it back.
This is the rotation. That's what Global are really here to do. They're already set up nicely on the point. Just a bit of a gimme there. Xenofly even got hacked in the rotation, but it didn't come to anything. Patapan has charged up a lot more of that ultimate as that rotation played out. Zeon Flux taking some pain, and that's the barrage. That's what they were really banking on. Finds Bubble Kitty, Lil Rax low as well. Looking to try finish that one off. Finally able to get it. Nearly lost Queen in the mix. Olivier does lose the mech, but on the whole, Xavier looking decent in this fight. Committing a Valkyrie. Want to hold on to the EMP if they can, but might just need to commit it. Patapan with that double, though. They should be able to hold on here and cap the point back.
That's 4 in a row for Patapan as well. Look how quickly he charged up that rocket barrage. Speaking of charged up, it was also the Valkyrie. SQX now has an EMP as well for Global Esports. The good news is they capped that point super quick. They got 32%. Took Xavier a while to reclaim it, but Xavier do reclaim, and they're still in a strong spot.
Now Global, they're still waiting on some critical ultimates. That self-destruct is actually quite useful against the Pharmacy. It can really force their hand in where they can and cannot position. Patapan still coming up on an ultimate is just a threat in itself. Lurax nearly at a grab. That's going to be an EMP out. Not really a big connection, unfortunately.
He got nothing.
That's going to be Tay and Patapan down and out for the count already. Yeah, by not a big connection, that is exactly what I meant. Nothing at all. Res on Patapan, it's kind of a last hurrah. He got nothing out of his rocket barrage in the course of that fight, and Xavier suddenly completely whiffing the ultimates that they had at an advantage. Global cap back.
And this is where you'd expect for Xavier to be able to continue holding on to this point. They had everything they needed, including a defensive ultimate. Transcendence was available. But you have 2 with DPS ultimates, 2 big ones that can really give you a lot of mileage. And suddenly for Global Esports, continuing to get their own progress on top of the cap as well. Nearly overtaking, nearly now equalizing in terms of progress.
Early grab out straight on top of Queen. Oh, nearly get the rescue there from Tay, but not quite. And yeah, like you said, no Primal Rage out of Queen either. Banked on Tay coming in time with the Transcendence. Instead, that ultimate is for Nout, and Tay even dies for the trouble. And suddenly, Global going to take this lead and run with it.
So going to be a quick reset there for Xavier Esports, losing SQX late. Does get the EMP though, so now a second opportunity to come back through, get some good connection. We've seen Apudo get some really good mileage of his own EMPs. Now looking at the full Thai roster of Xavier, they need to be able to repeat that kind of performance that Talon did in our earlier match. 4 ultimates now available for Xavier. This has to be a fight that they win, or Global Esports will be able to take through the first round.
Nearly going to have a Valkyrie too. Should have the ultimates to make this happen. Huge connection. Absolutely gorgeous. That's 2 for Patapan. Now 3 as well. Picking up Zeon Flux. Looking to just hammer down on the last couple of these. Rain and Rockets. That's going to be the D-Mech to come out. They will be able to get a cap off that. That's 3 ultimates for the fight win. Might be a few too many given that Global have charged up a lot of their own. But Xavier do get back in control.
And the name of the game here for Xavier is going to be momentum. They need to make sure that a lot of the early damage, specifically from Patapan, does connect. Easier to defend with this composition than to retake, and for Global Esports in a better position to retake than they were before. 4 ultimates, now 5. If they win this, they will take the round.
And if they do get too low in this approach, they've got things like Sound Barrier. Unfortunately, that self-destruct not going to stop up Global at all, who now start committing ultimates, Rally and Coalescence. Even Tay going down. Sachok getting into the thick of the fight with the Primal Rage. Hacking him does not do a whole lot right now for SQX. Zobi down as well.
Big deal.
In spite of the Valkyrie. That's massive. Patapan, no support in the pocket. You got to remember Tay is still trying to make his way back to this fight. SQX down, shy of an EMP. Olivier out of the mech. Patapan's got a barrage, is just barely looking to connect it. They've got Tay coming in for the rescue with that Transcendence. The cap has been there for Global, and Patapan goes down without getting the barrage out. That's going to be the cap out and the hold for Global.
And you can see this is a game of very small margins here. Xavier were just about to come online with some very important ultimates right towards the end here. This is, I believe, an earlier EMP. There we go. So it was stunned out. He already used the EMP, so it does channel regardless, gets nobody. And that ended up costing them that entire fight and really snowballing in the way, in the favor of Global Esports here. But to sort of close up on the point made earlier, even you saw in that last fight there, SQX died on, what, 97% EMP, something like that. Just very close to getting through. Tay dying and very close to Transcendence as well. Zobi dying in the Valkyrie, not getting the res onto Tay. Very small things that end up negatively affecting Xavier.
By the way, SQX you may recognize from our most recent season of Contenders as SQXZ. So one letter down.
09615. I forgot the rest of the
well, a fair chunk of numbers. But one letter down, he's made his return. I like to think it'll be less and less and less until he's just S. At any rate, early damage onto Bubble Kitty. He's just going to have to lick the wounds for a moment, but Patapan ends up going down. Nice wrap around from Lil Rax.
Got a little bit too far away from his team there. Of course, Patapan we know to be a very formidable Widowmaker player, playing that other sniper now. Coming back on the McCree, he just loves these kind of hit scans. We'll see what he does.
I think you'll find actually he just loves these kinds of cowboy films and westerns. There's going to be Lil Rax again on the wraparound. This time Patapan not quite going to fall prey to it. Lil Rax has to be a bit more careful now that the flashbang's a factor.
So the Super McCree here is really good for Xavier. They have the ability to threaten Bubble Kitty with the McCree. They also have the ability to completely shut down Lil Rax who's playing the Sombra.
Ooh.
Barely misses that
nearly
flashbang.
got it. Oh, did force the translocate away, but unfortunately got absolutely necked by a rocket from Bubble Kitty, who is as of yet untouched in the skies, even finishes off Queen, and that's going to result in him having a rocket barrage available for the next fight.
This is upside down world for Xavier as well, because Global Esports, who played the straight 3-3 goats on the last map, is now going to come in with that Sombra and Fire combination that Xavier were playing. Xavier themselves, again, still attempting to get these hit scans underway. The Patapan is still yet to find success.
This is going to be a tough fight. The Valkyrie already popped early. You got Lil Rex angling up for an EMP. You got a rocket barrage as well, either to layer on top of it or just to close things out if things start to go south. Xavier really got their work cut out for them.
Valkyrie's over now for Xeon Flux, which should be go time for Xavier. Jostling for position, but they're losing progress as they do so.
They finally get some ultimates up. Nice hack out onto Zobi, but you can't really follow that one up. So Little Rags still just looking for that opportunity. SQX goes down as well to Bubble Kitty. So Xavier just kind of tossed some ultimates in to see if anything stuck. Nothing did. And now Global, without actually having to use anything, have even more in their pocket. Well, anything except the Valkyrie.
The important thing to note there is, despite not getting the kill into Zobi, which probably wasn't going to happen, hacking him out reduces the effectiveness of the entire Xavier squad. You don't have the Lucio with you. Global Esports can take a 6v5 or indeed a 5v5 at least without the Sombra play with them. Oop. That's something that they did, and that's something that they won with. Heading into the 90+% zone now, 5 ultimates in hand, EMP still available.
Patapan still has not quite connected the shots they need onto Bubble Kitty. Now they're just committing flight to the point because they have to.
Instantly down.
Rocket barrage. All these ultimates that Global have banked up. They finally cash in the check and they get the catch on Tay for their trouble. It's going to be a big EMP out on the remainder of Xavier. And with only Bubble Kitty going down, for what it's worth, Xeon Flux could commit a res if the time is opportune. Doesn't get the opportunity to, but it doesn't matter. Global Esports, rather, have got the fight pretty much on lockdown here. Valkyrie for good measure. Last few members of Xavier getting cleaned up on the point. Zobi going down, blink back off, and that is going to be a full shutout on the second point of Nepal to secure the 2-0 win.
You start to see the beginnings there. It was a very contentious map to start with that first round, starting out on Shrine, going both ways. It was back-to-back, and just in terms of how both teams were swapping control of that cap, but as soon as we got the Sanctum, seems like Global Esports got into their stride. They were able to find the victories, and for the side of Xavier Esports, never quite getting the correct answer, never quite getting their feet on top of that point. Being completely shut out 0 to 100 is a tough loss for Xavier Esports up against Global Esports in this opening map of the series.
It almost feels like Xavier pretty much did nothing for that entire Sanctum, right? Like, it's not exactly that way, but I mean, let's look at how that ultimately played out. They changed compositions. They had a couple of half-hearted engages. They actually had a lot of fights where they didn't really lose a lot of members. And Global Esports weren't even really using ultimates to actually make a fight happen. They were just they were maybe getting a pick or just forcing a position, forcing a retreat somehow. And then suddenly Xavier looked at the clock, they're like, oh, but they're at 99, we've got to go now. It's like they forgot that there was a timer on the whole situation. They could just eventually crack it open, and they never did.
I think the biggest issue is you start to see incipients winning with the composition that Xavier could not win through on the Shrine. And you're starting to see as well from Xavier the sort of breadth of the compositions that they can play. This is not just going to be a 3-3 coach team for the entire composition. They're starting to show that they can play the DPSs, not just any DPSs, but the exact same ones that Xavier are attempting to play and getting better results from that. So a lot of momentum going the way of Global Esports now, coming in through with this brand new Singaporean roster, first place in Trials. And as we've seen in Pacific history, Trials teams have been very good, and first place Trials teams notably have been exceptionally good.
Yeah, they're often teams that make runs right up into the deeper end of the playoffs. Indeed, we've had many a Trials team make it all the way to a finals. So, hey, maybe that is the trajectory for Global Esports. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. It is only the one map so far, but it is a map where they beat Xavier, and we talked a bit before this match, about what that might mean over the course of the whole series. But to do it even just in the microcosm of one map, especially with that shutout in there, is a really hot start for this team.
It's just about the cleanliness of the plays through from Global Esports as well, especially onto Shrine, where you could argue they had, they were starting on the back foot, but still up against what was basically a composition that's very hard to deal with, able to get that first cap through, able to snowball on through, able to still finish that map, get that 1-0, now start things out. As we're about to head into map number 2, which will once again be Blizzard World. Is this going to be one where Global Esports start really running away with the game, much like Talon did in our previous series, or is it going to be Xavier able to come through? Because Xavier only lost by some very close margins. When you look at Shrine, Sanctum, a different story. If we can tap back into the strengths of Xavier on Shrine, maybe Blizzard World could be a different story.
And also, historically, we've got to look at how Xavier's tended to do across different game modes. They do tend to look a bit better on payload-oriented maps where there is that different kind of momentum. It's a far more physical momentum. That is where they do tend to do a lot better. Like we saw, especially actually on Shrine more so than really Sanctum, the times where they were in control and didn't really have the momentum to carry that further, to carry that into an additional fight win or close out the map when they were at 99%. Those same issues tend to not plague them so much on payload maps. So let's see if that rings true for this particular season of Contenders as we make our way into Blizzard World.
And I want to start this one out by drawing some close attention to the Xavier squad here. We do have a substitution in. Olivier is out, THK is back in, and it's triple DPS running by Xavier with all 3 DPS members taking up the roster now.
We've seen this before. Just curious to see how this pays off for them. We've often seen it actually more on assaults than anything out of this team. So, bit of a change of pace here, and meanwhile, Global Esports on the defense running a standard 3 tank, 3 support.
What you haven't seen from Xavier so far is a standard 3-3 coach. They play for basically everything except that, and they are going to continue to try and run the DPSs pan back on that fire that he found success on trying with.
Now Xavier slowly looking to gear up, make the approach. They just want to take a bit of time, charge up an EMP, charge up some rocket barrages. So he does get picks. They actually answer back. Now fighting Bubble Kitty as well. Not at all phased by the loss of an ED. Now both their supports as they continue to put on the pain. Sachok goes down as your load. Xavier might just crack through this anyway. They do have the closer respawn.
You do see there, Zol went quite far forward to get that kill. So for Global Esports, spreading themselves out just a little bit too thin. And Xavier, they're able to thrive in the chaos because they have the extra DPS members. Specifically, THK on the Tracer can find those kills on the backside, as does XQ SQX. So now DPS Ultimate's about to be online, and Global Esports going to try and match with their own DPSs.
Here's the last Taraj. They're coming for another defense. Good isolation on Bubble Kitty, but no close out. 1 for 1 now, 2 for 1. Patapan down, and that's without Zobi able to make the res. He was the first casualty there. It's now 2 for 2 still. Global Esports looking like they could call this one back. Nice timing on the Coalescence. THK not really able to angle in to get the damage. Now Tay going down. Global Esports have sourly pushed Xavier back.
Lil Rex and Bubble Kitty doing so much work on the respective DPS picks here. You do see SQX on the Xavier side using that EMP in the middle of the fight. Catches 3 to 4 members, including Bubble Kitty. Nothing coming out of that though. They could not collect the kills. Xavier being pushed backwards. 2 ticks win in their favor, but it has not been a cap. And for Global Esports now about to go into and cycle into the own ults. Zobi dying fast right at the start of the fight again.
And because Patapan had moved so far forward to avoid the self-destruct himself, he ends up completely isolated and goes down next. Now they were able to run down Queen even on the retreat. Oh man, you can tell Bubble Kitty's just having a blast being able to play Tracer.
Bubble Kitty's had so much impact so far on the Tracer. Where's THK been? This has been ridiculous for Xavier Esports. Zobi's been a bit of a bottleneck for the team as well. It's been 3 fights in a row where he goes down at an inopportune time. Got to commend Global Esports for finding the kills, but also Xavier. What's going on? They're consistently losing members early.
Now Pulse Bomb available. Hack on Satchok, but he's able to stay clear. Nice stick on Patapan. Ideal target, and catching him just a bit too close to the ground. The EMP to follow up. Now Bubble Kitty gets himself another, already quarter of the way charged back to another Pulse Bomb. And look at this man go. An absolute masterclass on the Tracer, right in the thick of it. Ducking and weaving. Weaving and ducking. Looking like an absolute beast.
And this is where Global Esports is just getting so much done. Less than 1 minute remaining now for the offensive Xavier. Ultimate starting to come online, but defensive ones available for Global Esports as well, including a 4th one from Xenofly as well. When he gets that self-destruct, it's starting to look very dire for Xavier Esports in what will be their final push.
You like to think, though, it is their turn. Nice catch on Xeon Flux as well. That removes a huge ultimate. This time the self-destruct. Will it catch Zobi or Patapan? No, it will not. Tay does go down.
So one man
much better inside track here. They have hacked Xenofly. He's going to be alright for now with the sound barrier, but not much longer with the barrage laid down on top of him. Patapan dies for that, though, as Satchok gets aggressive with a primal rage. Now Queen has to try and rescue this fight. Zobi down again. They really needed that res. Queen is continuing to try and rescue this fight, able to get topped off despite the hack, but re-entry rather from Xeon Flux with the Coalescence, and Bubble Kitty closes out Queen. Xavier, despite the closer respawn, cannot crack Global Esports. Global have this on absolute lockdown, and Bubble Kitty continuing to go off on this Tracer. Patapan, last gasp on this Widowmaker's, not really getting anything for it, and this is looking like the last few kills to come through as Global Esports secure the defense.
It's just an MVP performance coming through from Bubble Kitty right now, taking down Patapan as probably the final members, the final couple of members. The last gasp for Xavier Esports not going to be enough, and this is where it's just a really unfortunate place for Xavier to be. They cannot beat the GOATs out of they can't beat the 3-3 GOATs out of Global Esports. They also cannot beat the dive or the DPS picks coming out of Global Esports. This is where there's no real weakness so far that can be exploited from the Global Esports side by the side of Xavier. They're not able to find something where, okay, this is where we can find a victory. This is our real win condition here. This is something that Global Esports are not doing well that we can actually defeat them on, because even when Global Esports just decide to run Tracer, there's no Brigade on the other side. Bubble Kitty cleans everyone up.
We're also just seeing I would say a little bit of a disconnect in Xavier's engages as well. We've never actually seen them cleanly go in as a single unit here, aside from that very first push, which actually went extremely well for them. It was unfortunate they weren't able to hold on for the respawns to come in, and indeed Global Esports played it really well to get themselves an extra opportunity to defend and push Xavier off the point. But on the whole, you've got to say Xavier just not looking as clean, anywhere near as clean indeed as Global are.
And that's about a map and a half in a row now as well. You consider Nepal as well, both the Nepal maps, rounds, neither of them were particularly good for Xavier. Especially Sanctum was very poor for them, and now Global Esports running what is going to be now a double sniper composition out the gate.
Oh,
this is going to be another different facet of this team. We've seen multiple compositions out of them now, including Pharmacy, including now Tracers, and now double sniper. It's something different. If they win with this, then, well, Xavier is significantly being outclassed.
I do wonder if it is a scouting hunt. So in fact, it looks like it's all just scouting, actually. That would have been a triple DPS. They did have Xeon Flux on the Sombra, but again, I do believe it was all for the purposes of scouting. They have now opted into a 3-3 go.
I think they were maybe considering that there was going to be a Pharmacy out from Xavier again. Yeah. It's been one of Patapan's primary picks. This is the closest to 3-3 goes that we've seen Xavier play so far. Are they going to find success, though?
Now moving towards the point. Xavier not really doing all that much in the approach. SQX not really getting too much charge here, already harrowing Global. But Global, as they barrage in, taking some pain, and Bubble Kitty goes down. Xenofly as well, very low. Keeping him topped off as they finish off THK. Now Queen taking the pain. Needs to be careful. Zoe goes down. It's just Tay solo healing now. Back on Xeon Flux, but he's just fine. Now they look to close out on Queen and finish off that
kill. It's going to be a 1 attempt.
This is where they can just drill this one home, drive down the rest, run them down, flatten them. Patapan down, Tay is down. SQX will dive for something, but won't get anything. That is a one and done for Global Esports to take the lead in the series unequivocally.
And such a fast cap as well. The 1 attempt out of there, the 1 attempt defense, not losing at any point. There was not a single lost fight for Global Esports across all of Blizzard World. A full hold onto A with a full cap out in the shortest amount of time possible. I mean, this is now such an extremely overwhelming performance on map number 2. You got to start thinking Xavier are down in the dumps.
And I was just talking about how traditionally Xavier have looked fairly good, at least much better in terms of momentum on these more payload-oriented maps. Well, we never got to a payload, either offensively or defensively, so it didn't even matter. They just ended up playing one half of an assault. It felt more like a control map again, where they were just never really able to get underway. I'm reminded of Sanctum, where they just had this plan and never really did anything, and suddenly they were out of time.
And this is where now, I have to be honest, I had some reservations about the Global Esports roster. Yes, I had a feeling they were going to be very good, but were they going to be a one-faceted team? Were they going to be a one-dimensional team? A 3-3 GOATs only team, maybe? I understand that's how a lot of teams can get a lot of success, especially in trials. What we've seen here has not been that. We've seen a multitude of different picks coming through from Global Esports, and so far, all of it has been successful. So far, all of Xavier Esports and what they've tried to run has been unsuccessful.
I mean, having seen that, you'd almost wish this team only played 3-3 GOATs because of how scary Bubble Kitty looks on Tracer. You wish that they never go back to that pick again if you're playing against them, right? Like, that was absolutely a masterclass throughout that entire defense. And against players who are no slouches on DPS, let's make that abundantly clear. Xavier just really looking like they're struggling off to a very cold start this season.
This is going to be a very potentially hot break we're going to have to take here, especially for Xavier Esports, who need to do a lot of work behind the scenes before we come back for number 3. But that is all, of course, going to happen right after this break.